Welcome back to Wolfgang Music and Video, if it's your first time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today, I'll be talking about Boogie Nights. Now, this is definitely one of my all-time favorite movies, and it's funny because I've seen this movie, I don't know, probably at least 50 to 100 times, but I hadn't seen it in a really long time, and so what I love about revisiting films, even if you've seen them a million times, is that you still notice things that you've never noticed before. I mean, like, for example, I never noticed the fact that Jack Horner has not only 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but he has 2, count 'em, 2.
Edition of 2, count 'em, 2.
Vintage pinball machine. So
Raymond's and Leo. I knew it.
So what's your sign?
I'm a Pisces.
What?
I thought that was pretty cool. I never picked up on that when I was younger. And then another thing that I never noticed before watching it this time around was the fact that Alfred Molina's character, Rayhead Jackson, the like Chinese guy that's hanging out in his house, Cosmo, I never noticed it before, but he's wearing a Rick Springfield t-shirt, you know, and of course, like, they're listening to the famous, you know, Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield, and he even has that quote where he's just like, Rick Springfield, a buddy of mine!
I just know it. Ricky Springfield, the buddy of mine.
Now, the first time I ever heard about Boogie Nights was actually through a skate video. It was 411 issue 44, and it was like a day in the life, or like a check-in with pro skater Rick McCrank, who's one of the most boring looking human beings on the face of the earth, at least back then he was. But anyways, there's a part where he's giving like a tour of this like rental house, and I'll just never forget it because like he says something about like a 70s style house, kind of like the house from Boogie Nights.
70s style house, kind of like the house from Boogie Nights.
God, there's so many amazing things about this movie. I mean, first of all, the movie pulls you in right away with like a fucking epic soundtrack, you know, coming straight in. Like, just, I love how it does like all those long, steady following shots, which similar to Goodfellas, but, you know, personally, I think Boogie Nights is a way better film than Goodfellas, but that's just me. That's just me. Yeah, everything about this movie is just phenomenal, from the soundtrack to the costume design to the acting. And like, for a 2 hour and 35 minute long movie, I feel like it actually goes by pretty quick. Especially the 70s era part of the film. That one seems to go by the quickest, and it's definitely the more vibrant and like joyful part of the film. Once you enter 1980, that's when it kind of starts to go towards more of the dark side of everyone's characters. I mean, the movie, if you've never seen Boogie Nights, I mean, obviously if you're watching this video, you probably have seen Boogie Nights, I would guess. But if you haven't, basically the synopsis in a nutshell is Mark Wahlberg plays Eddie Adams, later known as Dirk Diggler in the film, once he becomes a porn star. It's essentially the story of the rise and fall of not only Mark Wahlberg's character as a porn star, but just kind of like the film industry and like the porn industry in general in the 70s, and like especially the transition from film to video. I always loved that part of the film. I always thought it was great too, like the 70s and 80s like pop cultural difference. I mean, like, I feel like 10 to 15 years ago, it's like there really isn't that much of a like pop culture difference or like style. Like, maybe the only thing that's different is like cell phones, but I feel from like 1977, where the movie starts off, to like even when you get into like 1983, like just everything that they're wearing and the way they have their hair is just like so drastically different from like where it started off. So apparently originally Leonardo DiCaprio was offered the role of Eddie Adams, Dirk Diggler, but he actually turned it down due to the fact that, you know, he signed on to do Titanic. So he actually recommended Mark Wahlberg for the part, which I'm really glad that Leonardo DiCaprio turned it down and did Titanic instead, because I mean, like, even though I don't think Mark Wahlberg's the greatest actor, I think he does absolutely amazing in this movie. I mean, like, this is one of his best films besides the 1996 movie that he was in, Fear, with Reese Witherspoon. Like, that movie, he was pretty good. Like, he actually acted, and then I feel like in Boogie Nights he was actually an actor as well. I feel like most of his other movies he's kind of just like, I don't know, the same fucking person that he is like in every single movie, basically. He's just like, I'm Mark Wahlberg, I kind of look like a pig. I'm going to Seattle with you.
I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go to Seattle.
And then Burt Reynolds, apparently he rejected the script 7 times before he finally agreed to sign on, which I can't remember who they like might have possibly gone with. I want to say Bill Murray was one of the options, but thank God he didn't take the part, because I'm sorry, I mean, a lot of people love him, and I thought Bill Murray was fantastic, and What About Bob in Lost in Translation, but I think Bill Murray's totally overrated. And Burt Reynolds, no one could have done it better than Burt Reynolds, and I guess this was like one of the first like solid offers that he had gotten in a really long time. I mean, because right before this, he did this fucking terrible movie called Striptease. The only good thing about it is that it shows Demi Moore. I think it shows her naked, I can't remember. I mean, I guess I don't remember because the movie was that fucking terrible. And then John C. Reilly, oh my god, the dynamic between him and Mark Wahlberg in this film is like one of the greatest parts. I mean, I just love how they instantly become butt buddies. Like, they just immediately hit it off, and they kind of just have like this little competition going on right over. Just like, I asked you first, how much you bench?
What do you bench?
You tell first.
I asked you first.
I thought it was great too how they brought up Star Wars: New Hope. I mean, like, nah, they didn't specify which Star Wars, but I mean 1977. Yeah, I mean, I don't even like Star Wars, and I know that it came out that year.
Hey, did you ever see that movie Star Wars?
Oh, about 4 times.
People tell me I look like Han Solo.
Yeah, it's fun. I remember telling my sister that this was one of my favorite movies a long time ago, and she was like, "Oh, you just like it because it's about porn." But actually, it's funny because I like everything about this movie except for the porn aspect of it. I mean, at least the part, like, I don't know, like, honestly, when I rewatched it, I actually fast forward it during the first section, because it's like, yeah, we get it, he has a big dick, he fucks this girl, he comes in her, blah blah blah, let's just get on with the fucking story. To me, it's more, nowadays, it's like, it's more stereo porn. I mean, like, all the sound systems in this movie, I mean, right off the bat, when you get introduced to Don Cheadle's character, like, working in that stereo store trying to sell, like, the TK421 modification, which apparently that's, like, a Star Wars reference. I don't know. I don't really like Star Wars. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the movie.
Like I said, I'm a fan.
But yeah, not even just when it introduces Don Cheadle's character, like, it's working in the stereo store, but also, like, when it does the really cool shot of Dirk when he gets home from work, and, like, it does, like, the little, like, circular shot around it. Like, one of the things I noticed watching this time around was his, there's like an 8-track stereo system, because I just started collecting cassette tapes, and I even had like a couple of 8-tracks, but I mean, of course I don't have an 8-track player or anything, but I feel like the late 70s, early 80s was like the pinnacle point of home stereo systems, like just music, like stereo systems in general.
Go on and move with it if you need to, it helps me.
Now, even though I think everyone does a phenomenal job acting in this film, I think the 2 best actors, or at least my favorite like actors in this movie, was, I think Phillip Seymour Hoffman was, I don't want to say he was underrated, but I feel like his performance kind of like outshines everyone else just because of how ridiculous he is. And
Cause how'd you meet Jack? Cause I work on the film, you know, sometimes. So if you ever, yeah.
I just love the fact that he's like obsessed with Dirk Diggler. I mean, like, immediately, I feel like even just starting with that song that comes in, like, you sexy thing, I mean, in terms of the stellar soundtrack to this movie truly did change my life when it comes to music. Because I mean, like, I was about 17 the first time I saw this, so when I watched this movie for the first time, I was like, I wasn't disinterested in music, I just wasn't like as passionate about it as I am now, like, but I just feel like every single song in this film is just not only perfect, but like, and not only does it like accentuate every scene to like make it even way more epic than it already is, but I just love how it's a lot of songs that like people would have not normally heard of if it wasn't for this movie. Like, one of the bands in particular is Sniff and Tears. They're like a British group from the 1970s, late 70s. Because when that song comes in, when it introduces Thomas Jane's character, Todd Parker, that is like one of the most epic parts of musically in the film, at least for me.
Todd Parker!
But what really changed it for me was the ending to this movie, you know, because it comes in with, after Dirk pulls out his dick and puts it back, it kicks in with Electric Light Orchestra's Living Thing. Which is funny because apparently Jeff Lynne originally declined the offer to put his music in this film because he didn't like the pornographic matter, but then once he read the script, and I think he saw most of the film, and he like ended up really loving it, so he figured, fuck it, why not? I'll put my song in here, and thank God he did, because like, not only is it an amazing song, but it just changed my life musically, because I went from being like mildly interested in music to actually wanting to learn how to play music and write songs, you know? Because I remember, when I first saw this movie on VHS, like, once the ending came around, like, normally once a movie ends, I'm like, oh, thank God I can fucking do something else. I'm bored as shit. I want to get out of here. I want to get something to eat. I want to get a drink, kill myself. You get the point. So I would just keep repeatedly rewinding the song over and over and over just so I could hear it again. Because, you know, when I first saw this movie, it was like, I think like 5 years or so before YouTube was even a thing. I think my number one favorite part in this movie, I mean, it's really hard to pick one because there's just so many phenomenal and hilarious scenes, is that definitely Alfred Molina's appearance towards the end of the movie when they go to like sell him the fake kilo of cocaine and he's listening to all those like hit 80s songs. What is it? Sister Christian. I love that song. And then, yeah, like I said earlier, Jesse's Girl. And then the last one is 99 Luft Balloons. Besides Phillip Seymour Hoffman's part in this movie, I think Alfred Molina might have been the other greatest actor in this film. I mean, like, he's only in the movie for like the last, like, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes, and it's one of the most memorable scenes, at least to me. Like, I just love how he's just so in the zone, like smoking crack. I mean, this guy's in like Saturday Platinum, like, I'm taking the next fucking 4 days off to recover from this, you know, smoking all this crack and drinking for who knows how long. And I feel like I can relate to him. I know what it's like. It's like, I hate when people come over and it's like, oh, I got some beer, I got some weed, I got this, and they're just like, nah, I'm just gonna drink water and sit in the corner and pout. It's not like I could do this all week by myself. I mean, to me, if I'm not in the mood to party, I will just not go hang out with people and go to a party, but that's just me. That's just me. I mean, fuck, I mean, if that guy offered for me to play baseball, I'd be like, not my fault this is happening. Gotta go play baseball. I think my other favorite scene in this movie too is after Dirk quits the porn industry temporarily and him and Reed go to start recording music. And I think what I love about it is, like, one, they fucking suck. But I think what makes it so great is that they think that they are like the greatest musicians ever. I mean, I guess it's not too bad. Like, Reed seems decent at guitar, and like, but Dirk is just singing so out of key. And I guess apparently the song is like originally a song from like a Transformers movie or the Transformers show from the 80s or 70s. I don't know, I don't have that much nerd DNA, so I don't really give a fuck about Transformers. But yeah, some of the many reasons that I think Boogie Nights is one of the greatest movies ever is the fact that it's comedic, it's dramatic, it's extremely dark. I mean, there's some very dark matter in this movie that, I mean, I don't want to give a spoiler, but I will, because who gives a shit? This movie's been out for like 25 plus years. I mean, you have a scene where William H. Macy sticks a gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger, which is pretty much how I feel when my alarm goes off on Monday morning. And I think what makes this movie interesting is, like, all of these characters learn all these, like, valuable hard lessons in life, but, like, I feel like they don't really change that much throughout the movie. I mean, like, because when it shows them all towards the end, it's like, I feel like everyone's essentially the same. I mean, which is fine. I mean, maybe they just aren't taking things for granted as much, especially Dirk, 'cause, I mean, he comes back and, as if he, like, quit some job thinking, oh, grass is always green on the other side, I'm not gonna fuck the porn industry, I could be a musician, I'm gonna get another job that's better, and this sucks and I'm broke and I have to sell fake drugs. Yeah, some of the films I can compare this to would definitely be, it reminds me a little bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is probably my second favorite movie. No big deal, I own it on Blu-ray. You know, some people have said, like, oh, I think Paul Thomas Anderson is just trying to rip off Tarantino with this movie, but it's like, fuck that, no he's not. Like, he has enough of his own style, in my opinion. But the difference with Paul Thomas Anderson is that he doesn't have as many good movies as Tarantino. Like, Paul Thomas Anderson has put out some fucking boring films. I mean, like, I love Punch Drunk Love by Paul Thomas Anderson. That one's pretty good. Heart Eight's amazing. I liked Magnolia. Phantom Thread was super fucking boring. I hated it. And I'm sorry, a lot of people love There Will Be Blood. I gave it a chance, and that movie made me want to stick a fucking gun in my mouth and pull the trigger. It was so boring. I tried Inherent Vice. That one was cool visually. And what I like about that one is that it made me appreciate Joaquin Phoenix's acting a lot more. Like, I kind of hated him before that for literally no reason, which was stupid. But, you know, you grow up and you realize that, hey, give people a chance. But, yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson's most recent film, Licorice Pizza, that is more closely, I would say, linked to Boogie Nights out of the other movies he's done. But yeah, anyways, phenomenal stellar soundtrack, great acting, great costumes, amazing cinematography. Honestly, Jack Horner's home, that is my fucking dream house. That would be perfect. You know, mid-century, you got a pool. You know, Jack probably has root beer. Oh yeah, one last side note before I close out. I think it's funny how everyone, like, Dirk and Jack seem to be, like, mildly romantically linked with Amber Waves without necessarily being in a quote-unquote, like, relationship. So I love how Dirk never allows himself to, like, kind of, like, fall victim to romance. Like, he's just kind of a free spirit, dude. I don't know, it's just weird. And, like, I feel like Jack, too, it's like they have, like, a close relationship, but they're not together, but it seems like they're together. And then same with Dirk and Roller Girl and Amber. It's like he's kind of acts like he's with them in some parts, but he's not. I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. There's no, like, complications to the matter. I guess that's what happens when you do porn. Anyways, I could not possibly recommend Boogie Nights enough. I mean, one of the greatest movies in my opinion. Overall vibrant film. Check it out. And until next time,
I see the moon.
Is it real?
But social studies division, this is gonna be tough.
Rock and roll! My son Billy got the lead in the High School Musical.
Well, I guess he likes the cock after all.